Alright, I'm going to teach you how to make your own minimalist holster. This particular one will be for a Glock. It's pretty easy to do this. You will need some sort of weapon or analog for the weapon to do this. And a small piece of kydex. And I'm just going to use this heat gun to heat this up till it's soft. You could also put this in an oven. I actually went to a thrift store. Typically when I'm at home making these, I went to a thrift store and bought an old pancake griddle. And it's perfect for just laying this on there and getting even heat. But I didn't want to lug around a pancake griddle to work. I'm getting this pretty well, messing my table up here. I've got it pretty well soft, as you can see. And since I don't have gloves with me for some stupid reason, I'm going to use this rag. Hopefully this is hot enough. Take my analog, take this, lay it across, use my rag to kind of protect my hands from the heat. And what I'm doing is I'm just mushing this over, okay? And I'm kind of making a triangle here, and at the very end I'm pinching this tight. I want it to be pinched really tight in the actual trigger guard, because that's the retention obviously. And then I kind of want it pretty tight at the tip of this triangle here, because that's where I'm going to rivet a hole. And you don't have to rivet it, but it helps to rivet it. It makes the hole a little stronger. And you can kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. Now I'm a little off here, trigger guard wise. See how that gap's there? So that's not going to work. Okay, I've heated it up, and now I'm mushing it across the trigger guard and making sure I have some extra in the front, which you'll see when I'm done mushing it. It's a flat piece. It gives me a space to rivet it. You don't have to rivet it. You can just drill a hole in it. But I think riveting it makes the hole a little stronger. It doesn't snag on the cord quite as bad. But if you just drill a hole in it and go through it with some, a rolled up piece of sandpaper or something like that just to smooth it out, that'll be fine. Somebody's paying $20 for this one, so they're going to get the whole kit and caboodle with the lanyard and rivets and all that other stuff. So I'm going to do it the right way with these guys' stuff. It's starting to get cold enough that I don't really need the rag, and you can kind of see how that's, even now, it's already sort of getting some retention to it. And one thing I don't like is this little gap right here. Just for aesthetics, so I'm going to warm that up and see if I can push it in a little. Much easier to do this with gloves than it is a rag, because you have a little more dexterity. You can feel what you're doing with the gloves. Good thing about kydex is you can heat it up quite a few times before it starts losing any of its integrity in terms of strength of the material. So holding that flat this time, getting that pinch out front, and you want to push this as close to the trigger as you can, because the deeper it goes in that trigger well, the more retention it's going to have. See, that's much better. It's flat across the bottom, got a good flat place to put a rivet, and then just I'm holding it there till it sort of cools off. And I'll come back to the video when we get to the next step. Okay, it's pretty well cooled off. And you'll see how there's a lot of extra material here. But even at this point, hear that click? I mean, that's a lot of retention. Not too much. I mean, when you need it needs to come out of your waistband, it will come out. Especially when we clean off some of this extra. But what I'll typically do is I have it on my analog here. Make sure you don't go so far that it covers up the mag release, because what will end up happening is this kydex will press against that and it'll fall. So stop a little short of that. And I'll take a piece of chalk or something like that, and I'll kind of, as I'm looking at the gun, figure out where I want this stuff, the material, to stop. And I'll just kind of get a rough outline of where I want this to stop. And there's the basic shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Dremel tool to cut that out and then sand it off, and then we'll be riveting and doing the final shape up. Alright, got my Dremel tool, the cut off wheel. I'm going to cut off the extra here. There's that side. Go back to the analog. Still got plenty of retention. See how this overlaps there? It's going to do that every time. It's not going to be perfect in the front. So what I'm going to do is make this cut match on both sides. It's just an aesthetic thing, but alright. Next thing is to swap bits and go with a sander and smooth everything out. Got my sander here. Knocking all those rough edges off. Once I've got that knocked down pretty well with the machine, I'm going to use just a light grit sandpaper to polish those edges up real nice. Alright, I got everything smoothed out, so the next thing I'm going to do is drill the hole for the rivet. I want to get it as close to the edge and then the front as possible, because that's where it's at its flattest, and the rivet seats better if you can get it close to the front. And this drill bit I'm using came with my rivet kit. Get it started. There we go. There's that. And then we set up to rivet. Alright. Only thing left to do is to rivet it and run the cord through it. So I've got my rivet set in here. I'll line that up with my block and my press and rivet that down real good. No gaps. Got a nice rivet going through there. I'll melt the little end of this cord. I usually use parachute cord, but I didn't have the color he wanted, and I actually like this cord better. It's what I use on mine. Parachute cord is cooler, I guess, in the tactical crowd, but this slides better. I just think it's more comfortable. So since I don't have the color he wanted, I'm just gonna give him this, and if he didn't like it, I can send him some more cord. The thing with the cord is, even if you buy one of these things from someone else who's made it, you're gonna want to adjust the cord to it fit, because the cord's what sets the depth of this rod's in. Okay, and you don't want it, if you have a bunch of slack in your cord, if you have any slack in your cord, it's going to ride ouch, ouch, deeper than you want it to. Okay, and I'll show what I mean in a second. So push this cord through, and I'll start out just tying the knot at the very end. And this is just to hold everything together. Just looping it through itself, nothing fancy. I guess you could be as fancy with this stuff as you wanted to be. So that's pretty much it. Here's a cleared Glock 17. Now I'm making this for a guy with a Glock 19, but the trigger guard's the same. And you hear that click, nice retention, okay? It's not going anywhere. Okay, it's not like this is gonna slip off in your pants or something. And basically what you're gonna do, and I don't have the right belt on to do this, is a very thick belt. But I think we can make it happen. So, untuck my shirt here. Tell you what. Let's get that out of the way. That out of the way. Alright, so this is how this works. You're going to run this through your belt loop. Not even your belt loop. I actually prefer to run it around the belt. Hope this is on camera. And then you just put this through the string and cinch it tight. Okay. Now, I'm sure the bullet fairy didn't put any bullets in this. Run this back on there. Now this cord is obviously too long because this is where I'd want it to sit and I have all the slack. So what I would do is I will just, when I take this off, I will take about, to see how much slack I've got? That's how much further down I'll come and tie another knot. Okay, so it'll cut some of the length out of that. But basically the principle is, okay, full-sized weapon, regular shirt, pretty well concealed. But when you go to draw, in your draw stroke, you're going to pop and leave this behind. Okay. Also notice that I'm all the way to here before I'm popping that out. That's too high. And what you'll find is for most people, the improper amount of depth to have it ride where you want it to ride is also going to be popping it about right here. A normal place where it would be coming out of a holster anyway. So, to adjust that, just take this off, move down, tie another knot, trying to eliminate the right amount of slack, and we'll run it through again. Make sure you're passing it through the shortest knot. So, taking some of that slack out. Now that's perfect. Rides right where I want to. It's not going to go any deeper than that, so I'm never going to dig in my pants and find it. It's not deep enough that it's going to cut into me when I sit down. And because there's no holster or clip really there, this can adjust as I need it to as I'm walking, sitting down, moving around, but pretty much always be in the same place when I go to draw. You know, pulling up, straight up, straight up. Okay, so your same draw stroke you would come from 3 o'clock, basically you're just inverting it and coming from the appendix and drawing like that. So what I'm probably going to do with this, the retention, you want good retention, but the retention is probably actually a little too tight on this one. So before I ship this off, I'll probably just quickly run the heat gun over it just to barely warm it up, put it in and out, make sure it's clicking where it's not, you're not fighting out. The reality is in a gunfight, this thing's coming out. Okay, but you don't have to fight with it and be trying to force it in there. So I'll fine tune the retention by running the heat gun on it. If you don't have a heat gun at home and you're doing this by making this in the oven, you can run a hairdryer over it or something like that. So pretty simple. Not a lot of money invested in this right here. Not a lot of time either. And you don't have to have the rivet press. You don't have to have the rivet. Okay, you could use a shoestring, a piece of kydex you could buy on eBay for $5 and get a huge chunk of kydex and a hairdryer. And if you have a little Dremel tool or something you can hand sand it with, or even some really heavy duty shears to cut around the excess and then hand sand it off, you could be into one of these things, you know, for $10-15 and then have all the stuff to make as many of them as you want, as long as you're buying your kydex. So, hope that's interesting to somebody. I'm going to send this off to the guy that paid for it, and hopefully he'll like it.